sometimes as I'm walking down the street and I talk to people about water and water quality, I get a kick if I see a guy who's out there washing his car, because he obviously enjoys washing his car. Typically these people have nicer cars, but particularly if it's a dark colored car. Black BMW, dark blue Vet, doesn't matter what kind of car it is, could be dark gray Focus, doesn't matter, but it's a dark color that I know is going to show the spotting really bad, meaning not a white car. But I get a kick out of people, and particularly if they have a nicer car that I can tell they're very proud of, and they're taking great pains in keeping this thing clean. And I see they got their pail of soapy water there with the washing their car. And I walk up and say to them, by the way, let me put a shot glass of Clorox in your pail here. I think this would be really good for your paint. Well, they look at me like, you're insane if you're going to do that. And I go, well, do you realize that that's basically what you're washing the car with? Basically, the city has chlorinated the water for a valid reason. We understand why. But that chlorinated water is now in your pail, and using that chlorinated water to wash the paint on your car. Does that make any sense to you? And they go, no, it does not make any sense to me. So when I ask them, can I set up a time to stop by and I'll show them a system that actually does remove all the chlorine out of the water for the entire home, so they're not washing their car with chlorine that's going to have a negative effect on their paint. Sometimes I talk to people about, do they have any problem with spotting issues? And I met a gentleman recently who actually owns a local car dealership, very, very nice man. And he had quite a collection of cars, as it turns out. And I thought, oh, he certainly has to care about these. And what was interesting also, he had a competitor's piece of equipment in there that he was just having the biggest fuss with spotting. Well, it turns out he now understands he literally bought the wrong type of system for the type of water we have in the area around here. But when I explained to him the benefits of the Higg WaterMax, how it works, its ability to remove the chlorine and the other organics, and the hardness of the water in one piece of equipment, this clearly was appealing to him. He was also, I remember that, highly recommended by a good friend of his who had had our system for quite some time. But I thought certainly he's going to want this beautiful car collection spot free. And I said, by the way, have you ever considered, do you ever wash these cars? He goes, of course. I said, do you also dry them? He says, no. I said, well, how do you get them clean? He goes, well, I take them to the dealership that I own. They wash them at the dealership for me. I said, oh, well, would it appeal to you to have spot free here for the cars? So if you rinse them here, they'd be spot free. He goes, I told you, I never wash the cars. I have a dealership. The dealership washes them for me. And I thought, this is true. He has a benefit that most of us don't have. His detail shop will detail any one of his cars. They do the entire lot. Why can't they do 6 of his? So then I realized that he really has no need for spot free for rinsing cars. Well, somehow he goes, but can you do spot free? I said, absolutely. He goes, well, let me show you something, because I do have a problem with this. And he took me in his backyard, which was nowhere near where the cars were, but he had a beautiful glass railing all the way around his deck, and it's glass. So every time he would wash it, it would spot horribly, and he would have to spend a tremendous amount of time trying to dry this glass, or he's now looking through spotted glass, which he didn't like. He also had this immense piece of glass that had to be 12 feet wide and literally 20 feet tall, that he would try to keep, and it was a wind block. He would try to keep this piece of glass clean, and he would spray it with the water, and it would spot something horrible and so forth. I explained that if he even rinsed that with Higg WaterMax water, or any soft water, that would still spot, that would still be an issue, so that's not the solution. And because it's such a big piece of glass, unfortunately birds would crash into it, and there were messes on this glass that he liked clean, and he couldn't get the results that he wanted. But he asked, can you make that piece of glass and the railing around the deck spot free? I said, well, let's take a look at that. Well, we walked around the house for a bit, and yes, we did come up with a way to install it. It was a creative install. I was very proud of that. He said, that makes perfect sense. He goes, that I want. And I said, by the way, do you happen to have a pressure washer? Because you're going to need to pressure wash something to shoot up there 20 feet up high like that. He goes, yes, I do. I've been using the pressure washer for everything I've been doing, including that. It's just the results are lousy. Anyway, we did do the WaterMax system for his home and a larger reverse osmosis system with a specialized tank and a specialized installation. And again, I asked him after it's all done, how'd that work out? He goes, that was great. He goes, I do wash it with the WaterMax water, and then I rinse it with the RO water, and he goes, and I walk away, no squeegee, no nothing, and it drip dries spot free. So if you have these type of issues, people in Shell Beach where they're up against the ocean and the salt spray is causing them some problems. We do specialized installations for people who need spot-free applications, either their businesses, their homes, whatever. If you have those type of issues, please call us. Sometimes people talk to us about how much water do reverse osmosis systems really use? And I learned this very early on in my career. Regardless of what a manufacturer prints in a brochure as far as how many gallons an RO uses, in reality they use more. And we have a very specific piece of equipment. It's called a model H3500 that utilizes something called a permeate pump that keeps the amount of water that an RO uses at a minimum, which is where we think all ROs ought to be. But I met a gentleman in San Luis Obispo quite some time ago, and it was during the drought when his well was going dry. A lot of people's wells were going dry, but particularly his was going dry. He knew he couldn't drink the water. He understood the benefits of a reverse osmosis system. He understood that they use some water, and I explained that they certainly do. It'll dump about 4 gallons to make a gallon. At the time, this is early in my career, and I still see new people in the water business who are not acutely aware of this, kind of like I was not acutely aware of this at that time in my training. The brochure said it uses 4 gallons to make 1, so I told him it makes 4 gallons to make 1. He goes, well, I've heard these things use a lot more than that. I said, no, this one uses 4 gallons to make a gallon. Well, he thought about that. He only needs 1 gallon a day, and he thought, okay, if it uses 4 gallons to make 1, he can collect that 4 gallons. This man does not waste a drop of water because his well is going dry. And he would water a plant or something with that 4 gallons, but he would certainly make use of this 4 gallons of wastewater, if you will. It was not going to go down the drain, that's for sure. So we did install the reverse osmosis for him. It was a non-permeate pump unit. It was a standard reverse osmosis system. It made good water. That was not the issue. But he took this drain line that I told him it would take 4 gallons to make a gallon, and he put it into a 30-gallon trash can. Most of us had 30-gallon trash cans on our premises. It should have filled up with 4 gallons of water. He would have watered his plants with it. He calls inside 2 days. He says, this thing is dumping 30 gallons to make a gallon. I said, well, that can't be right. He goes, I'm telling you, it's dumping 30 gallons to make a gallon. I can't handle this with no water in my well. So I thought, well, maybe he's got a bad shutoff valve. Maybe there's a flaw in the system. Checked it, checked this, checked that. Everything was fine. But the fact is, it does dump 30 gallons to make 1. Well, I did call the manufacturer at that point, and then they explained to me something I'll try to explain to you here in this short video. If you don't have a storage tank online, virtually every RO that's out there runs at 4:1. So it is not a lie when a brochure says 4:1. However, all ROs are tested and validated with no storage tank online. So it's true. On a test bench in a lab, they run at 4:1. So therefore, when it says 4:1 on a statement, that is true. But in reality, when you put this thing in the field, if you hook up a bladder tank to it, that bladder tank is going to add back pressure to the system, back pressure to the membrane. And as you do that, that ratio will go from 4:1 to 8:1 to 12:1 to 20:1. In this man's case, it went to 30:1 because he had some low pressure issues and other issues that a normal person might not have. But in reality, 20:1 is very common. 30:1 was reality in that system. The bottom line is, I learned something about non-permeate pump reverse osmosis systems, and I did take this system out. I understood in his particular situation that could not work. He wanted it dearly. He wanted it to be effective. He wanted it to be efficient. It simply wasn't. So we removed that, but he still respects us as a company because we realized we did not sell him what he needed.